All right, fellow fact checkers, we've got a brand new sponsor, and I am excited to promote this product. It's Fox and Sons Coffee. Now, Fox and Sons Coffee is a family-owned and operated small business selling whole bean, organically roasted, amazingly good coffee. On their website, Steve, the company's founder, describes how his love of coffee started with special Saturdays with his dad when he was growing up. Steve wants to share his love of coffee with you and the entrepreneurial spirit with his sons. Check out the website, foxinsons.com, and take a look at their best offer, a monthly subscription for 3 bags of coffee with free shipping for $38.89. Also, Steve's been on the show. He's a friend of the show. He follows us on the morning after as well as here on Fact Check This Podcast. Steve is a great dude, great company to support. So go check out Fox and Sons Coffee and get your morning started off right with a bag of delicious Fox and Sons coffee. Let's start the show. All right, Fact Check This Podcast, and today I am joined by Stephanie Knezinek, and we are going to talk about Christian astrology and some of that sort of stuff. I have always been told that I am very much a Sagittarius, and I have no idea what that means. I don't really um, pay attention to it. I actually had a boss one time that she said, "You're a Sagittarius, aren't you?" I was like, "Yeah." She's like, "I knew it." It's like, okay, that's cool. Um, yeah, I've never really kept up with it. There was a group of us at work that we would read our horoscope at the end of the day. Like we'd get the newspaper and do the crossword puzzles and everything, and then at the end of the day, we'd read our horoscope to see if it was actually accurate to the day. And surprisingly, a lot of times it was, which was interesting. But uh, they, we would do it at the end of the day. That way, it didn't influence us for the day. Like we wanted to see how it looked after the fact. So that was pretty cool. But that's really that's really the extent of my experience with anything astrology related. So I'm gonna let you introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll kind of dive right in.
Yeah, so my name is Stephanie Knezinek. I go by my astrology name is basically the Mountain Mystic. I use that name because, there's something mystical about the study of astrology. And um, I also live on a mountain in Northeast Alabama, so I figured the name fit pretty well. But yeah, I've been studying astrology for almost a decade now, and I actually started out pretty skeptical about it. I didn't actually. I'm also a Sagittarius sun. Um, Funny enough, I've never been told that I exhibit any of the qualities that Sagittarius usually does. But and as the deeper I got into astrology, the more I realized why that was, and I might go into that later. Um, but yeah, I just picked up an astrology book about 8-9 years ago, and even though I started out with that skeptical mindset, I just kind of flipped through it and found the more I read, the more it seemed to apply. And as I started studying the charts of those around me, I found that it was scarily accurate, which with each and every one of them. So, and then I, leapt into transiting planets and how, planets, as they move through the current sky, how they could, reflect events that go on in our personal life or events in the world at large. So that the more I read, the more I studied, the more accurate it seemed to be.
Cool. So I guess just kind of give me a for dummies walkthrough of what we're going to be talking about exactly with some of the astrology stuff. Like how does that all kind of work? Because
So
I'm pretty clueless.
yeah, I gotcha. So a lot of people seem to have the misconception that the planets influence us, or because, somebody's sun might be in Sagittarius, that's the way they are, or because their Mars is in a certain sign, that dictates how they act, that dictates how they go to achieve their goals. That's not how it works. The analogy I typically like to use is that it's the cosmic mirror. So it reflects things. It doesn't cause things. The way I explained it to my son is that when you look in the mirror and you see that you have blue eyes, that mirror doesn't make you have blue eyes. That mirror shows you that you have blue eyes. So in the same way, like I hope that makes sense. The planets don't cause, they don't influence us, they show us and they reflect to us. They show how energies might manifest in a person's personality or on earthly events. So I hope that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, that kind of clears some of that up. Like I said, I have done some very basic, like surface level type of looking at stuff. Like
Mhm.
my wife is a Gemini, and we get along great. And according to everything that I've read, Sagittarius and Gemini are natural match. My
Mhm.
ex-wife was a Taurus, and we didn't get along all that well, and that also seems to make sense. Um, so maybe there is something to a lot of this stuff. Uh,
Yeah.
so so why don't you? Let's start with I gave you all my information. We were going to do like the reading thing. Let's start with that, and then we can kind of take it from
Okay.
there, and we can jump off into more depth on what some of this stuff means.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. Um, so let me see here. Yeah, and if you want to pull up the chart that I have there, that'll kind
Yes.
of, even though I know that looks like complete gibberish and it doesn't make any sense at all to anybody who doesn't have an in-depth knowledge of astrology, it'll at least allow me to point at certain things so that that I feel like some visual representation on some level can be helpful, even if you don't know what everything means, and it'll kind of help me to be able to pinpoint things and explain as I go along. So typically, most people, when they think of astrology, they think of their sun sign, right? It's the position that the sun was in, the star system, the constellation that the sun was moving through at the time that you were born. So most people don't realize that the astrology is way more than your sun sign. It also takes into account the position that the moon was in and every other planet as well. And each planet and each sign in your chart is going to dictate a certain energy or a certain aspect of your personality, or where a certain aspect of your personality may shine forth. So right here, this circular thing right here, this little circle with the dot in the middle, that's your sun. And this arrow right here, that represents the sign of Sagittarius. So that would say that the sun was in the sign of Sagittarius at the moment of your birth. And what the sun typically represents, it's your outward expression, it's your ego, it's the things that you do. So Sagittarius, um, typically when people think of Sagittarius, they think of teachers, they think of philosophers. Um, I'm a Sagittarius sun too, like I said previously, so I understand a lot about Sagittarius. We have a fascination with ideas typically, and when we when an idea takes hold of us, we will chase that idea as far as we can, and we will chase that idea to its very roots. And there is no shortage of time that we will spend in researching an idea, because we chase that idea, we chase that philosophy, we want to know everything that we can about it. And I wouldn't be surprised if you've ever been called a know-it-all in your life, because I've heard that a lot, or I've had people kind of become annoyed with me because we read, because we research. Some of us can kind of get a little bit, arrogant and thinking we do know it all. And to some degree it's true. And but the thing is, there's good intentions about it. It's just curiosity. We have a never ending curiosity. There's a never ending search for truth. We are obsessed with searching for truth. We're obsessed with searching for knowledge, and we want to share it with everybody. And that's why Sagittarius is typically thought of as the teacher, as the philosopher, because that is what we do. We chase ideas, we find out everything we can, and then we want to teach people about it. There's an adventurous aspect to Sagittarius's as well. It's kind of the mindset of, you only live once. So, we want to do it big. We want to experience everything that life has to offer. Sagittarius also rules things like faraway travels and foreigners. It's common for Sagittarius folks to have the drive, the curiosity, the desire to see everything they can in the world. They like to travel. They like to meet everybody from any foreign country that they can. And that kind of, that plays into that never ending curiosity. We want to know everything about everybody. We want to talk to everybody. We want to know every idea. We want to find out everything, so that's Sagittarius, those are the major aspects, I would say. We can be a little bit scattered. I don't see in your chart that you're scattered brained, but you might come off to other people as scattered because we have that, constant search for knowledge and truth, and we're always finding out new stuff. When we talk to people, it might come off as like, you're all over the place. Sometimes you can come off that way to people, or sometimes it's just like, whoa, slow down. You're throwing too much information at me. I don't know if you've
But
ever.
in my head, it all connects. Like I know where
Right,
every connection is, and I can
right,
put it all together if you've got like 3 hours to sit down and let me map the whole thing out for you.
right, exactly. Yeah, and so another thing in your particular chart, when I pulled up your chart and I saw that little sentence where you said that you've been described as very Sagittarius, I just kind of had to laugh when I saw your chart because Jupiter you see this little symbol, it looks like the number 4. That represents the planet of Jupiter. Jupiter is actually the planet that rules the sign of Sagittarius. And Jupiter, think of Jupiter as grandiose, as big. It's the biggest planet in our star system, right? So anything that Jupiter touches, it's going to expand. It's going to make bigger. So when you see these numbers right here, so your sun in Sagittarius was at 23 degrees of Sagittarius when you were born, and that Jupiter is right behind it at 22 degrees of Sagittarius. So whenever you see a planet run into another planet like that in a chart, it's going to create a blending of energies. Now, because Jupiter is in Sagittarius and it's the ruler of Sagittarius, and it's almost right on top of that sun in Sagittarius, Jupiter is expanding that Sagittarius energy. So it's basically multiplying that. So that's why I kind of laughed when I read that you were, described as very Sagittarius, because that's that Jupiter in Sagittarius expanding and magnifying that sun in Sagittarius energy. Does that kind of make sense? Yeah.
Makes it all add up perfectly.
Right. Yeah. So that's probably, and you see this number 3 down here that all these planets are sitting on top of? That number 3 represents the 3rd house. So the 3rd house rules things like, so the houses they represent certain areas. They represent certain domains of life, or areas in which those energies can manifest. So the 3rd house is going to be your house of communication. It can represent how you come across to people, how you communicate with people, your communication style. It can also reflect your immediate environment. It rules things like cousins, siblings, and uncles and aunts, the kind of those extended family members, those people that you might see in your immediate environment. It rules communication. It could explain or represent, your writing style, your speaking style, so immediate information, how your mind works, how your thought processes run. So basically 3rd house it's usually representative of communication in your immediate environment. So as you're communicating with people, and as you're writing and speaking to them, that's where that Sagittarius energy is going to shine forth. And so that energy is really going to manifest strongly your whole life. Anytime you talk to people or anytime you write to people, that Sagittarius energy is pretty big and loud. So
that makes a lot of things make more sense.
Mm-hmm.
So for some background, I did public speaking stuff all through high school, and did competitions and won competitions in that regularly. Also, like stuff that anything that was big research type stuff. Uh, I was really good at that sort of stuff,
Hmm.
and writing. So that
Hmm.
makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, so that doesn't surprise me at all. One thing you have, eh, I'm kind of envious of this placement. I wish I had it myself. You got over here. You see this little yellow thing. It almost looks like the sign that represents Venus, but it's got like little horns on it. You see that little yellow thing right there. So that's your Mercury. So I don't know if you know anything about Roman mythology, but Mercury, typically it is associated with Hermes. Um, yeah, so it deals with Mercury can indicate our thought processes, how our mind works, how we process information. And you have your Mercury in the sign of Capricorn. Capricorn is highly analytical. Capricorn is all about strategy. Capricorn is all about the long game. Capricorn is all about being sure footed and double checking and triple checking and making sure that you have the right information and being strategic about it and making sure you're right. And, like I said, being strategic. So having that Mercury, that planet of thought processes and how you process information in a sign where you're going to be disciplined, where you're going to be strategic, where you're going to be thoughtful about each and every step. That doesn't surprise me that to hear that you are a very good writer and a very good debater, because that mind in such a disciplined sign, and then combined with that sun that drives you to search for that, to that strives to satisfy that curiosity, that strives for constant information. You're taking in all of this information. You're always chasing information, and then you're processing that information in a very disciplined, thoughtful, rational way. So that I could absolutely see that representing you as a really excellent communicator, and somebody that most people would not want to go head to head in a debate with. That makes you a really formidable adversary in any kind of debate or argumentative, arena. So yeah, and now when you're talking about astrology, probably the most important aspect of a person's chart is your ascendant. So your ascendant, also called your rising sign, is the sign that the sun was in as it was cresting over the horizon. So it's the light that blesses your body as you enter this earth. So over here, this little circle with the line through it, that's going to indicate your ascendant. And your ascendant is at 8 degrees of Libra. So some people believe this indicates who you are at the soul level. I don't know that I would necessarily characterize it as such, but it is a very strong influence in any chart that you look at. The ascendant is the most important aspect. So your ascendant is going to indicate possibly how your body looks. It represents the body. It represents the self. It can represent your overall demeanor. What people see when they look at you. Uh, and you're in Libra. I don't know if you know anything at all about Libras. They can also be a little bit scattered. So it does multiply to some degree, that scattered energy that you have with all of this energy in Sagittarius over here. Libra and Sagittarius are both fairly scattered signs. But Libra has a very strong sense of justice. They can be indecisive, over trivial matters. Like for a Libra to try to purchase a plane seat, they're going to be like, well, I can save $5 if I do this day. And then, well, do I want the window seat or do I want the aisle seat? Because aisle seat, I have easier access to the bathroom, but man, I love looking out that window. And it's just, you get bogged down in all of these, little details, and, they can, it's almost like decision paralysis. Sometimes you find that with Libras. But when it comes to matters of right and wrong, where there's a moral issue at play, they they will come down with no issue. They have a very strong moral compass and a very strong sense of justice. And in matters of where there's a right and wrong, or there's a justice oriented issue, they have no problem at all making a decision. So I really appreciate that about Libras. So the symbol of Libra is the sign of the scales. So think about right and wrong, think about justice and whatnot, and that will give you a pretty good idea about Libras. They're also very charming. They love to talk to people. It's very important to them that that there's an appreciation for beauty and aesthetics. A lot of Libras are pretty well dressed, but they love to talk to people. They love to interact, and they come off as charming when they do interact with people. So I don't know if you've ever seen that in yourself, but I do see that in your chart.
That's really funny. Yeah, so that's it's all making a lot of sense.
Okay.
Okay, so we don't know each other from Adam. Like, we have minimal interaction with each other on like Twitter, and that's about it.
Right.
So like, you're not saying any of this stuff from having known me since I was like in high school, and when I really started to develop all of these personalities and stuff. But all of this is like really spot on. So that's kind of both scary and cool.
Yeah, and I get that reaction a lot. I've been told I can see right through people just by looking at their chart. It's yeah, and it's funny, and that's what turned me from a skeptic to a believer, and that's what
Well, that was like when I was talking about like when we would read our horoscopes at the end of the day. Like, we would do it at the end of the day, so that like it wasn't, I guess, like me and the couple guys that I worked with at the time that we would do that. It's like, if we read it we had this theory that if we read it in the morning, that knowing that we had read it in the morning and that this is what our day was supposed to look like, it would like somehow subconsciously influence us, and then our day would become that somehow. So we would wait and we would read it at the end of the day to see if it was accurate. And I feel like that's kind of like how this is. Like, I going into this knowing absolutely nothing really about this other than just a very surface level like Google search from time to time on different stuff. To, like you said, it's like the mirror. Like, it's a reflection. Like, none of this stuff necessarily influenced anything about me. Like, I was already me, but this is like an explanation of me that is really cool, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, it can be really fun, and it can open your eyes to, things that you don't necessarily want to see. I remember early on, I was seeing stuff in my chart, and I was like, that's not me. Some of the more negative, or what could be perceived as negative qualities in a person, I was like, nah. And then, the more you look into it, the more you think about it, the more you realize, well, maybe that is something I need to work on. Maybe that is a tendency that I do have. So,
well, some of this, like the scattered stuff, like I've always definitely been the type that like I'll drop everything and just go do something on a whim because it strikes me as like that's going to be cool or that's going to be interesting. Or we at one point we averaged living in one place for about 10 months at a time, because every time something new would come up and I had an opportunity to take a promotion or take a raise or take a different job somewhere else, then it's like, yep, let's do that, and pack everything up and just move off to another state. And it was a lot of fun for a lot of years. It was also a huge strain on my first marriage and my relationship with my now ex, and I probably wasn't the parent that I probably should have been at the time either. But like, it was exciting and life was fun doing that.
And it satisfied that Sagittarius adventurous and free spirit. Yeah, absolutely. And it wouldn't have worked out so well with the Taurus. Taurus is like safety. They like to feel safe. They like to stay put. They like to feel cozy and comfy and warm. They like things to be the way they are. So I absolutely understand why that didn't work out.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned your current wife is a Gemini. That makes sense too, because if you look up here, you're down here, Sagittarius. Your ninth house is represented by Gemini. So Gemini and Sagittarius are directly opposite to each other. So that little expression of opposites attract, it absolutely applies a lot of the time. So Gemini and Sagittarius, they both have this fascination of ideas. I would say um, the main thing that separates Sagittarius and Gemini is, if you could think of Sagittarius as an inch wide and a mile deep, Gemini's a mile wide and an inch deep. They know just a little bit about everything. And Sagittarius will know a whole lot about a handful of things. So that's always, that's always kind of the main. I don't know if you see that in your wife at all. I don't know if you see her as a lover of ideas, but more of a, um, more of like just a cursory knowledge of just about everything. Or I don't know if you see that, but I would venture to guess she's a good communicator. She's very smart, very witty, very funny. That's typically what you're going to see in Gemini. Sagittarius and Geminis do share a great sense of humor. Um, they both have a tendency for debate and arguing. Gemini tends to be a little bit more polarizing. When I think about Gemini, I think about Donald Trump. It just, either you love him or you hate him. You get a cult following on either end. You either hate his guts and I'm not saying I fall in either camp, and I'm not saying you do, but that is if you think about Donald Trump, you definitely think polarizing figure, and that's pretty typical of Geminis. So yeah. Um, yeah, another thing that kind of jumped out at me is this Mars over here. So you have that Mars in your first house in your ascendant. So you have that Mars in Libra that kind of compounds the Libra energy, but it also adds a more aggressive aspect to it. I wouldn't be surprised if you've ever come off as overly aggressive, or if you've come off as overly argumentative to people. And I'm guessing you're laughing because it's true.
I wish my wife was watching this and would say, "You don't say."
Yeah. And if you see this big red line between this Mercury and that Mars, that tells me there's a conflict between these two areas. And it's kind of like each element of energy demands, they're competing. Think about two people squaring off in a boxing match. That's kind of what the energy is like between your mind over here and this Mars that kind of drives you to attack with those words, or to attack with the information that you kind of stowed away up here in the brain. Now, this Mercury in Capricorn, that disciplined thought process, that really methodical approach to how you process information, is in your fourth house of home and family. So I do see this causing, I could see arguments manifesting in the home on occasion, or I could see that being a repetitive theme. This also hints to me that maybe, like I said, the fourth house is home and family, and it's your roots. It's where you come from. Think grandfather, think ancestors, think, it can represent your actual home life and the energy and the attitudes in your home overall. But it can also represent your childhood, your upbringing, where you came from, how you were raised. So this maybe hints at me, maybe you had a father that was a strong disciplinarian. Maybe you had a really traditional upbringing growing up. Maybe you were just taught the importance of discipline. Maybe you were just taught the importance of respecting tradition. Maybe you guys have, a pretty good genealogical record. Maybe a lot of information was passed down through the family tree. And I see a level of unconventionality in you. I see a little bit of quirkiness or eccentricity to some degree. And I see maybe an indication. I don't know if there was any sort of um, impulse to break from tradition at any point, or to maybe challenge those ideas you were maybe brought up with, or maybe say, hey, here's a different way of looking at things. Or, I'm just kind of, these are just kind of things that jump out at me as possible manifestations. I'm just kind of thinking out loud here, but I do see some potential hard lessons in childhood, or discipline in childhood. I saw you shaking your head when when I said that you were brought up in a traditional, traditional kind of household. So
And our entire family is buried in the family plot that is literally 200 yards from my grandmother's house. Like we
that's
lived right
awesome.
across we lived right across the field from my grandmother's house, and our family plot where uh, going back going back to the very first Campbell who was settled on that property. Uh, Everybody, all of our family members are all buried in the same little family plot there. So it is, yeah, there is a
Yeah.
lot of tradition there.
Okay. Nice. Yeah. That's definitely very Capricornian fourth house energy there. So yeah, Capricorn also represents the bones in the body. So, that kind of jumps out at me too, about having a family plot that goes back a long time where everybody's buried in the same place. So that's pretty cool. Um, yeah, the other thing, probably the first thing actually that jumped out at me right away when I looked at your chart is I see a lot of financial savviness. I see you as being like shrewd with finances, as being very good with money. About you know being very conscious of what you want to do with it and how you're going to control it and where you want it to go. And so I definitely see that there. One thing that's really important with astrology, I said the most important thing is your ascendant. It is that ascendant in Libra. um, you always want to look at the ruler of the ascendant. So the sign of Libra is ruled by Venus. So Venus is always going to be the most important planet in your chart, or your current transits, or whatever's going on. You always, when you're looking at a birth chart, you want to see any aspects to Venus. So are there any planets that are interacting with this planet Venus? Those are going to be particularly important, or they're going to manifest particularly strongly, in your personality or in your life events. So this chart ruler also is going to kind of influence the flavor, so to speak, of this ascendant. So even though you're a Libra ascendant, this Venus down here that rules that Libra ascendant is in Scorpio. So so you're going to have some Scorpio qualities shine through, especially in your second house of finance. I know I'm throwing a lot of information at you, so tell me if at any point I need to stop or slow down. But like I said, second house rules money, rules finances, it rules practical resources, or things that are overall important to you. So this Venus in Scorpio, it lends a really strong influence of like intensity. Scorpio is intense. Scorpio is passionate. Scorpio can be obsessive. I don't know if you've ever found that, you know, you have a little bit of obsession over finances, a little bit of obsession over, where the money's going, where it's coming from, where it's, what you're going to do with it. Um, but you have Saturn right on top of that Venus. You have that Saturn in Scorpio right on top of that Venus. That's going to lend some restriction, or it's going to lend some discipline, because Saturn does represent discipline. Saturn represents hard work. Saturn represents perseverance. So I could see that, and that's why I think shrewd with finances, or calculating with finances, because you have that Saturn sort of reflecting a more disciplined approach to how you manage your money, or a more strategic approach to how you manage that money. A little bit of patience, maybe. Maybe you're, even though you're naturally probably more impulsive and more impatient when it comes to money, I would see that maybe you're a little bit more controlled. Maybe you're a little bit more restricted. Maybe you do have the ability to delay gratification in that kind of arena. Does that kind of make sense? Or
Yeah, I wish you could see my screen, because I actually have my tab pulled up right here next to this one. That is my spreadsheet. that has my finances going all the way back to when I got out of college. Like I can tell you everything I've spent money on for the last 15 years.
Wow. Okay. That's awesome.
So yeah, I'm only just a little bit obsessive and
Yeah.
kind of strategic and well planned. And like that's the way I manage my finances is whenever I get paid biweekly. So whenever I get paid, I then and I take that paycheck and I break it all out to every single bill that I've got for the rest of the month. Like what all has to get paid. And then once all of that is taken care of, then I figure out, okay, what else are we working on? Like we've been working on the house. We've got bills and expenses with that. How much can I pay off on each of these and still leave myself with enough gas money to get to work for the next 2 weeks until I get paid? Like it's all very, very calculated. If anybody saw the way I manage stuff, they would probably think I'm some sort of psychopath. But there's a very very strict method to the madness, and it
Hmm.
works really well for me anyway.
Hmm.
I would never suggest anybody else like try to manage their money or their brain the way that I kind of put stuff together because it is the scattered thing is very real, but it's all very connected and there's a very real discipline to the way it's all
Hmm.
done.
Yeah. How funny. That's so funny. Yeah. And yeah, and I just see it as being super important to you. I see you value that. It- Now, if you look up in your 10th house of career, and that's what the 10th house rules. It represents career. It can represent your overall mountain to climb in life, what your overarching goal is for this lifetime. And that's this midheaven right here. That represents what is your mountain to climb in life, or what is your goal for career. And if you see this big thick blue line that runs from that Venus and Saturn to this midheaven right here, that means it's kind of think about these I would say maybe best friends, best buds, or maybe close siblings. Like you just get each other, you kind of finish each other's sentences kind of energy. It's not like here where we were talking about two people squaring off in a boxing match. These are best friends. You can finish each other's sentences. You understand. You're on the same wavelength. So this shrewd, financial, calculating, disciplined, aspect of your personality jives really well with this midheaven in Cancer. That's the sign of Cancer right here. That's your 10th house of career is ruled by Cancer. Cancer is Cancer likes to be the provider, in taking care of those who are important to you. I'm not sure how that shines forth in your career. I'm not sure what you do for a living, but Cancer, a lot of people overlook this about Cancers. They're very shrewd with money. And I think that's probably driven by that need to nurture, that need to protect, that need to think about a mama grizzly bear. Who's making sure that she's eating enough before she goes into hibernation, and who would absolutely lash out and destroy anything who threatened her bear cubs. That's kind of the sign of Cancer in a nutshell. They're wanting to be the provider. And that jives. You can't provide if you're not shrewd with your finances. If you're not disciplined about where your money's going, you're not going to do very well as a provider. You're not going to do very well at nurturing. You can't nurture people. You can't nurture those you love if you don't have anything to give them. So that jives pretty well. Cancer is a water sign. They're sensitive. They care. A lot of people accuse Cancers of being crybabies. I wouldn't say that would ever manifest for you like that. I don't see that anywhere else in your personality, but in the 10th house of career, I would say probably at work, or probably your overall public perception is that you are empathetic. You do care about people, and you do know what you're doing behind the scenes with money. So I don't know if any of that resonates with you at all, but that's what I see there.
I've, I've my entire career has been in management, and uh,
Okay.
I've always I've always put a lot of emphasis on taking care of the people who work for me. Like if you're part of my
Mhm.
team, then you're mine. Like you
Mhm.
are my crew, and I will go to bat with you, or I will go to bat for you no matter what. Make sure like, you do good by me. I'm going to do good by you.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, and if I had to choose, I'd probably always want a cancer supervisor or boss or manager because you do want to work for people that have your best interests at heart and care about you. So yeah, so that's pretty cool. Yeah, and
So I was gonna
yeah.
say, I was gonna ask real quick, like about some of the lines. Like, how does the Cancer connect to the Mercury? Like, what do the different lines mean?
Oh, right. So red lines are going to indicate either oppositions or squares. So opposition is pretty straightforward. You have a planet that's directly opposing another planet. So that's an opposition. So you think of, and these just represent how these planets are interacting with each other and how that can create either a flow or a conflict or a tug of war between certain aspects of your personality or certain themes in your life, if that kind of makes sense. Um, so these lines that you see going straight across, these red lines, these are going to be oppositions. So you may feel a tug of war between between these energies right here. So so anytime you see an opposition, it's a sign, it's a planet and a sign that directly opposes another sign that's thought of as the opposite. Earlier we talked about Sagittarius and Gemini. There are clear delineations between the two, but they do have a lot in common. So this one right here, the thinner the line is, the weaker the aspect is. And the weaker the aspect is, the weaker you're going to see that influence manifest in your life. The thicker the line is, the more obvious in your face it's going to present itself in your personality or in those themes. So that's why I made sure to point out this Mars, is squaring your Mercury's because I'm guessing that jumps out over and over again in your personality and in your life. This one right here, I wouldn't, there's 5 degrees of separation here, which in astrology, anything 3 degrees or under is going to be really strong. It's going to be something that you really want to pay attention to. Once you get, 5 degrees and over, I'm not going to say, I wouldn't say you'll never see it in your life, but it's not going to be loud. It's not going to be in your face. It's going to be a lot more subtle. Um, these blue lines, they're called trines. And that's where I explained, best buds, close siblings, finishing each other's sentences. You're on the same wavelength. There's no conflict here. The energy flows, it jives, they understand each other. Uh, Sextiles are interesting. That's these green lines right here. Sextiles, you kind of think of those as siblings who quarrel every so often. You understand each other because you were raised in the same family, you have the same background, but sometimes you fight like cats and dogs. Um, so some astrologers would say that if you put in the work as though it was a square to understand that aspect, then you're going to get the benefits that you would get out of a trine. I don't know if that makes sense or not.
So how does that connect for, like say the line down here at the bottom that you were just running across?
Oh, this one?
Yeah, from the Mercury to the is that going to?
Yeah. So yes, your midheaven in Cancer. Is that the one you were talking about?
Oh, I was talking about the sex one. Yeah,
Oh,
that one.
this. Oh, okay. Yeah, so this would double down on the disciplinarian type energy. This is Capricorn. This is your Mercury in Capricorn. I understand Capricorn a lot. I have a lot of that influence in me. Uh, Capricorn is disciplined. Capricorn is stern. It's stoic. You're not going to be emotional. You're not going to be fuzzy wuzzy. You're going to be strategic. You're all about thinking for the future, planning for the future. You don't. They don't ever appear vulnerable. You never want to show any vulnerability that anybody could take advantage of. And that's something that Scorpio and Capricorn have in common. So, Scorpio and Capricorn are both very conscious of never wanting to be exploited. You're very conscious of the dark side of human nature. Um, and you don't ever want to fall prey to any of those people. So there's a degree of stoicism there. I wouldn't think that would shine forth a lot in your outward expression or in your personality, but there there's a I would say it doubles down on that disciplinary uh, or stern long term planning as far as when it comes to finances. So that's the energy I see there. It's your thought process is being ruled by that Capricornian energy, kind of lending that extra uh, discipline, lending that extra hard work, lending that extra perseverance to managing your finances, because Capricorn is ruled by Saturn. So Saturn, I know I'm throwing a lot at you, but Saturn rules the sign of Capricorn. So with those, sextile, they understand each other, and it kind of doubles down on that energy there. That's what drives you to create those spreadsheets, and that's what drives you to not only draw out the plan, not only analyze, not only plan, but hold to the plan once you've actually, drawn it out. So
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
okay.
And also the conflict with the work life thing, because I am very
Mhm.
disciplined and all of that, but at
Mhm.
the same time, where work is concerned, I am also somewhat empathetic and a little more like I said, I try to take care of my guys. So sometimes there is the very very light conflict of, are we going to do uh, what's good for the guys, or are we going to try to push numbers and do stuff like
Mhm.
that? I
Mhm.
don't. That doesn't affect me a whole lot, but yeah, there is,
Mhm.
because usually I'm going to do what's best for the team. Because if we're doing what's best for the team, and they're
Mhm.
all doing well, then they're going to naturally push for the better numbers. So I don't have to worry
Mhm.
about that side of it, because if you take care of your people, then they're going to, by that,
Mhm.
do the other thing. It's all interconnected.
Yeah, and I could definitely see that slight tug of war, that slight conflict of will there. Capricorn is viewed as uncaring and detached and cold. So that absolutely doesn't jive with Cancer, who wants to nurture and take care of and make sure everybody feels good and make sure everybody's happy. So yeah, I can definitely see that um, coming into play in your career at times. So yeah, that doesn't surprise me. Yeah. One. So in astrology, when you look at somebody's chart, or when you look at somebody's overall astrological, personality, you focus on three things pretty much. You focus on their sun, their ego, their outward expression, which for you is Sagittarius. You focus on their moon. This will dictate either how you express emotions or how you feel your emotions or what you need to feel emotionally fulfilled. And then you focus on the ascendant. So that's what we call the big three. It's your sun, your moon, and your ascendant. So this is a really beneficial placement, actually. Your moon is in Taurus. This is actually the moon's favorite sign to be in because, like I said, the moon dictates if you're having a really crappy day, when you get home, what you do to make yourself feel better, it might be a reflection of your moon sign and the house that moon is in. So with your moon being in Taurus, Taurus likes to feel safe. Taurus likes practical comforts. Taurus likes good food. Taurus likes, a good beer or a nice glass of wine. It really appreciates those kind of things. It likes a comfy couch. It likes a comfy bed. It likes to feel safe and warm and cozy. So, I could generally people with a Taurus moon, um, you know, they come home and they eat a plate of cookies or they drink beer, cozy up with their favorite blankie, with their favorite movie, and that's all it takes to make them feel better. Yours is in the eighth house. Um, so the eighth house is kind of like the darker, shadier aspects of life that people usually don't like to think about. So, so it lends a little bit darker. And I don't mean darker as far as negative, just like darker as far as tucked away or hidden or things that people don't like to think about. It lends a darker energy to that cozy, fuzzy, warm, safe moon. So eighth house represents things like death and mortality, represents things like taxes. Nobody likes to think about taxes or mess with that, especially if you're libertarian leaning or anarchist like we might be. Eighth house also rules sex and the bedroom, what you do in the confines of your bedroom. Basically things that you don't want other people to see. Basically things that you might not want to see, if that kind of makes sense. So eighth house is very sensual, also. So I could see you appreciating sensuality. Or I could see you maybe being fascinated with questions about the afterlife, or fascinated with, kind of those darker themes in life, a certain fascination or a certain curiosity. So I don't know how that might manifest, but that's kind of Taurus moon in the eighth, is as best as I can put it.
That's interesting. I definitely do enjoy. So that's my comfort chair right there. That's I will pour a very strong mixed drink and come just lay in that thing and put on a TV show or something. And I do have it. I guess I do have it. My wife says I'll have a weird taste for movies and shows and stuff. I like stuff that's weird and out there, and
Yeah.
like really crazy sci-fi stuff, or really crazy like mystery thriller type stuff. She says the reason that she has nightmares is because of the stuff that I go to sleep watching on on TV. She blames her nightmares on my on my TV show selection. So I guess I do kind of like some weird stuff. I don't know. I don't think about it that way, but
Yeah.
I just think it's cool and weird, and I think it's cool and unique, and it puts my brain working in a different way, and I like that. I don't
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think of it as dark, but I guess I can see how some people would.
Yeah. Yeah. Eighth house is definitely thriller, drama. Uh, I don't know if you've ever been into like serial killer documentaries or anything like that, or crime shows, or um, anything that kind of brings out that looking in the shadows kind of a thing, or, anything like that. My husband's a Scorpio, and I kind of have that complaint about him, is whenever we want to sit down and watch something, and he wants to watch something about, crime or something that involves, those darker elements. So yeah, I would say if you like to watch more quirky or sci-fi, or stuff like that, Neptune down here. Neptune rules actually movies, especially in regards to like sci-fi. You have Neptune in the same house as your sun and Jupiter, which magnifies that Sagittarius energy. So I could see that coming out. All that Uranus lends that eccentric or quirky, impulsive aspect to your personality. I could see that combining with your taste in movies. So, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Anything else? This has been very telling.
Yeah. So a lot of people turn to astrology for, like my closest friends will reach out to me if they have a new romantic interest or something. They'll be like, "What can you tell me about this person? Are we compatible?" So I don't, I, consent is very important in astrology. I will say that you definitely have to make sure you're getting birth times and you're getting birth information in an ethical way. So if you directly ask somebody and you get their birth time, that's totally cool with me. So usually I will indulge that curiosity of my friends. But if you look at the seventh house, it opposes the first house, right? Your first house is your sense of self. Your seventh house represents your partnership. It represents your relationships. It represents marriage, and it represents possibly maybe business partners, people who are people who are closely tied to you, people who you're going to interact with on a close basis. So most people think marriage and relationships when they look at the seventh house. So your seventh house is ruled by Aries. So Aries is, um, they often get accused of being hot tempered, aggressive. Um, on the more positive side, then they tend to be entrepreneurial. They tend to be, they can be impulsive too. It's more of a, act first, think later kind of an energy. It's the sign of the warrior, the sign of the, gorilla, the sign of the, when you think of the infantry grunt soldier going off to battle, that's Aries energy. Now, if you want more information on, you have an empty seventh house here. You don't have any planets really giving that house power or influencing that energy. What you could do is look at the chart or that house ruler. So Aries is ruled by Mars. So you're going to have a Libra influence with this house of marriage and partnership. So this energy that takes over your house of marriage and partnership, it can either indicate the type of person you become in a relationship, or it can indicate the type of person you're attracted to. So, I could look at this and say that you do value, when you do look at a potential partner or, things you may be attracted to in your wife, you may be attracted to the fact she might have a fighting spirit in her. She she might have a little bit of hot temperedness. I'm not trying to make any accusations. I don't want this to get me in trouble with the missus.
No, I'm making her watch this now. I tell her this all the time, that she's kind of spicy and she doesn't believe me. She absolutely is.
Okay. Yeah. With that being influenced with this Mars and Libra, though, I'm guessing she's charming. I'm guessing when she wants to turn on the charm, she absolutely has loads of it at her disposal. I'm guessing she's, really good at getting to know people and of course, if she's a Gemini, that's inherent anyway, always talking to people. I wouldn't be surprised to know that she's, maybe she's a chatty Cathy, or maybe she's just good at forming those networking relationships, or just good at getting to know the people in her community and being a positive influence there, or people view her as a charming figure, as a pleasant person to be around. Yeah, but I wouldn't be surprised if there was like you said, a spicy aspect to that personality. So with your relationship house being ruled by Aries and being ruled by that Mars and Libra, I could definitely see arguments, not necessarily being few and far between, but
not anymore. I grew out of that phase of my life, fortunately.
That's good. Yeah, but yeah, I think I covered most of the main things that kind of jumped out at me. I mean, that there's endless complexity in a chart, though. I'm still noticing things in my own chart, almost a decade after I started studying astrology, or sometimes I'll say something or do something, or sometimes somebody else will say something or do something, and I'll be like, oh, there's that, Venus in Libra, or there's that, there's that Mars in Aries shining forth. So it's definitely interesting, and I do feel that it's helped me to really understand people better. So, and be able to navigate those relationships more easily. So, and I always hope I bring that to the table with my clients or any friends that I help with analyzing charts.
This was definitely interesting for me, because a lot of that stuff, like I said, not really having a whole lot of knowledge about it, and then getting to see it and have you explain it that way, makes things make a lot of sense. You mentioned that you hadn't heard that you're very Sagittarius or something like that. Would you want to expand on that a little bit, or like what is it that makes you unique in that aspect?
Yeah, so so all of my Sagittarius placements, I have Sun, Mercury, and Venus in Sagittarius. So you would think that lends a very strong Sagittarian influence to me. The thing is, all of those planets are in the 12th house. Now, the 12th house represents hidden things. It's our blind spots. So people never see that because all of the Sagittarius aspects of me are locked away in the 12th house of hidden things. It's the shadow land. It's, you know, other people aren't going to see it most of the time. But so so yeah, when I tell people I'm a Sagittarius, they say, "Wow, I never would have guessed that." But when I tell people I'm a Capricorn, they're like, "Well, of course you're a Capricorn." So yeah, I've got 5 placements in Capricorn in the first house. So anything in your first house is going to absolutely shine forth in your personality. That's who you are. That's what people immediately see in you. And I've got all this stacked Capricorn energy in that first house of self. So that's what shines out at people.
Cool. Well, anything else you wanted to add, or and then you can give plugs or whatever as well. But
I mean, we didn't really go into the Christian aspect of astrology. A lot of Christians, I get this all the time, that astrology is not compatible with Christianity. I'm not out to necessarily convince those people or argue with them. You're more than likely never going to convince those people because I do understand there's a strong segment of Christianity that thinks it's demonic or it's witchcraft or whatever. I go off of what the Bible says about astrology. It says in Genesis that God put the lights in the sky. He put the lights in the heavens, and he said, "Let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and appointed times." There's other verses that I could point to. I just if we understand and respect that God put these entities there, they're not, Venus is not a deity. It's not an entity to be worshipped. So some of the more leftist leaning astrologers, and that's most of them, would disagree with me. They say Mars is the god of war. It's a deity that you have to respect. I don't believe that. They're just representations of energy. They're magnificent representations of energy that give glory to God, just as we should give glory to God. So, I don't want to get too much on my soapbox there, but
you can get as much on a soapbox as you want to. That's that is something that I find that sort of stuff interesting. I've got a friend who is he's a pagan shaman, and
okay.
whether I agree with that or not, I'm very firmly Christian. Whether I agree with it or not, like, it's a lot of stuff that has to do with nature and energy and a lot of this sort of stuff, astrology type of stuff. And for whatever I may think of paganism, he gets a lot of value out of it. And I also see a lot of real world connections to what he believes and the things that he does. And I was deer hunting one time, and we were gonna hang out and drink and catch up later that night. And so he was texting me throughout the afternoon asking how my hunt was going and if I'd seen anything. I was like, "Man, I've been out here for 4 hours. I hadn't seen anything. Like, it's perfect day for it." And I'm just like, "No luck." And he was like, "Do I need to get my bones and do a blessing for you?" I was like, "At this point, I'll take literally anything because I'm striking out." And so he like got me on he like FaceTimed me and got his whole get up on, and he did his whole thing and gave me the blessing. 30 minutes later, this giant doe comes walking out, like, just
Wow.
perfect right there. So whether it had anything to do with him or not, there's something. There might
Yeah.
be something to some of that. And so looking at stuff like this, um, it all kind of connects. Whether
Mhm.
you're worshiping the same God or not, there's definitely something to be said for the communal aspect of nature
Mhm.
and the planets, and I mean, it's part of the farmer's almanac stuff too, like the way
Mhm.
the way the world and the way the earth turns and the way the sky is positioned and the things that are going on
Mhm.
in the heavens and on the earth. It all connects, and I think there is definitely some value in exploring those connections and having a better understanding of them, both for your practical life and also just for, like, how it affects you and
Mhm.
understanding yourself. Talking about the inch wide and a mile deep. Like, I'm that's I understand me very well. And the
Mhm.
more I'm able to understand me, the better me I can be. And so, like, being able to look at this sort of stuff and get a good feel for yourself and know what it is uh, that you need out of life and how those things affect you. There's an infinite amount of value to that I don't think a lot of people spend enough time trying to just know who they are and why they are who they are.
Yeah, agreed. Absolutely. Yeah, and I definitely agree with you, and the idea that we are connected to everything. God put us on this earth. We are supposed to have a relationship with plants. We are supposed to have a relationship with animals. We become way too disconnected, and you know, but we followed the stars. A few hundred years ago when we were on ships, trying to figure out where to go. I don't see any demonic aspect of looking to them in this time period. I don't. So, as long as you're giving glory to God and thanking Him for our ability to do so, I don't see anything wrong with it personally. So,
Absolutely. Well, Stephanie, give plugs. Where can people find you, and how can they get a hold of you? Hopefully, people will reach out and get a look at themselves on some of this stuff as well, as this has been really, really fascinating for me. It was very cool how all of this stuff kind of lined up. So
yeah,
give all your
awesome.
plugs.
Yeah, absolutely. So, my business page is the Mountain Mystic. Um, my Facebook link is www.facebook.com/Astro Mountain Mystic. So that's Astro, ASTRO, Mountain. It's the abbreviated MTN, and then Mystic. You can also message me at Stephanie Knezinek. I'm pretty easy to look up. I've got a weird last name. So you can find me on Twitter by the same name as well. So those are the two that I primarily use. So I definitely appreciate it. I enjoy this conversation and I relish the opportunity to look at any chart. I love it. And I feel like I get a little bit better with every chart that I look at. So I learn just as much as everybody else every time I look at a chart. So thank
Awesome.
you.
Thank you very much. This has been a lot of fun. For everybody who is watching and listening, be sure to tune back in next Monday. I am going to have Adam Patrick on with me. We'll do it live on Friday afternoon. We're going to talk about the idea of Buddy Jesus and the kind of the degradation of American Christianity. Uh, I've been writing about that quite a bit on my Substack, and Adam and I are going to have a in-depth conversation about that. That'll be Friday, and then the actual episode itself will release on Monday. So be sure to tune in for that. And in the meantime, I hope everybody has a great rest of your day and a great rest of your week, and I will catch you later. Don't forget to head over to palomaverdecbd.com and check out our longest and most favorite sponsor, Carlos and Vanessa Abelar and Paloma Verde CBD. Get all of your CBD needs, and you get 10% off your order of $75 or more, plus anything over $75 is free shipping. So head over to palomaverdecbd.com to get all your CBD needs. Have a good week, everybody.